A few weeks ago, I checked out a sneak peek of the Aussie-developed Windbound, where a shipwrecked warrior named Kara must survive the perils of the Forbidden Islands. And what did we learn? Well, for starters, that I wouldn't last a day in her shoes. But now I have a second chance to prove myself because the full release is finally out. Armed with only a small dagger, her wits, and the ability to turn a handful of grass and rocks into a fully functioning boat, Kara's goal is to reunite with her tribe by uncovering the history of the Forbidden Islands, which you'll do by activating 3 mysterious beacons strewn about each chapter. This isn't really something that's explained to you more than you just sort of figure it out. Video game logic being that the big shiny ball of light in the distance is usually a good place to start. You can play Windbound in one of 2 modes, either survivalist or storyteller. The core difference between the two is the level of difficulty. In survivalist, enemies are stronger, Kara loses most of her items when she dies, and you are booted right back to the beginning of the game. Now, suffering at the hands of a system as punishing as that may be your thing, but it's not really mine. So I chose the storyteller mode, which lets you keep most items and only forces you back to the beginning of the chapter you're on if you die. And as I played more and more, I realised just how fortunate I was that I chose the easier of the two. Throughout your adventures, the looming threat of starvation will always be on your tail, forcing you to stop off and grab a bite to eat. Now, that bite could be of the local flora, letting you maintain a pacifist vegetarian diet if that's how you want to play. Or if you're like me and still hold a grudge against the local wildlife after... you can go after the wild beasties that roam this world. There's a pretty decent variety in the enemy types. From aerial menaces, to quick and agile land dwellers, to what is that? Oh no! Ew, why the tongue? Oh, get off me! No, no way. Oh, I can teleport too? What is this? Anyway, in terms of combat, one-on-one fights are fine, if a bit clunky at times. Things do start to get quite frustrating when dealing with more than one enemy, as you try and wrangle the tracking camera onto the creature you want to target. I did quite quickly learn to avoid these kinds of fights and stuck mostly to shooting arrows from a distance. But for those who like to get more up close and personal, it's not the most enjoyable combat system. Each creature you do successfully take down, though, drops resources that you can use to complete an ever-growing list of recipes for items that'll make your life slightly easier, such as upgrades to your boat to increase durability, improved weapons to help aid you in fights against teleporting McGee over there, as well as clothing that is both stylish and practical. Although there were times when my greatest enemy was the limited inventory space, which pretty much forces you to juggle your items between 2 or 3 locations. Now, in my early look preview, I mentioned that I was not, let's say, a world-class sailor, and that's still true, but I'm less inclined now to believe it's entirely my fault. While the sailing itself isn't too difficult to work out, it does take quite a while to get the finer points down, like when to loosen or tighten your sails and how to maneuver with the winds. Especially if you're like me and know nothing about sailing. So I would have appreciated a tutorial to help get me started. Even then though, there were times I didn't feel like I was even in control of my boat. Throughout the day, the winds will change direction and you'll run into more and more obstacles like rocks and reefs. Those I could handle, but I spent a good deal of time kind of just stuck in the water, not moving because I guess the wind wasn't going the right way. This may be just a subtle nudge to try and get you to explore more of the area, letting the wind be your guide, but it kind of did the opposite for me. I got so frustrated trying to angle my sails, struggling trying to get some kind of momentum, that I just ended up booking it to the next available beacon to escape the tedium. This does somewhat shoot Windbound in the foot a bit, as it is so heavily dependent on that natural exploration. I finished the game, and I'm pretty sure there are creatures and recipes I still haven't discovered. I didn't even know sharks were a thing until maybe 10 hours in, simply because I wasn't super jazzed about going that far into the ocean in case I got stuck again. It's by no means unplayable, and I definitely had some lovely moments out there, but because you simply spend so much of your time on the water, these issues stood out more. I did also encounter a few bugs here and there.
Yeah.
But I'm just choosing to believe Kara is actually strong enough to yeet fully grown creatures into the stratosphere. Jokes aside though, I'm not sure where I stand on Windbound. Visually, it's gorgeous, with a great variation in environments and landscapes to explore. I had some really intense encounters, and there's an enjoyable enough gameplay loop that kept me on the move looking for the next big score. But at the same time, I can see the cracks that may cause a rift too big for other players to get invested, especially because so much of Windbound's content relies on you being stubborn enough to push through to see it. Did I have a good time? Yes. But would I play it again in my own free time? I don't think so. So with that being said, I'm giving Windbound 3 out of 5 rubber chickens.